Hey guys, welcome to Python Learning. In last video, I showed you some tricks that can improve the way you write Python code. Here again, we are back with another video on Python tricks. So if you haven't watched the first part, then after watching this one, you can check out that one too. So I'll add the link in the description below. So most of the tricks that I'm going to show you in this video are more of tricks that you might have used at some point in time, but whenever you get into a situation where these kind of tricks are used, you often go to Google them or you go to Stack Overflow for that. So let's begin the countdown. On number 8, we have joining strings. If you're having an iterable having few strings and if you want to get them into a single string, then you can choose string separator of your choice and you can join these strings by passing that iterable in this join function. So let's print this and let's run this. So see, you get hello there Python learning separated by hyphen. Let's say you want to separate them by space, so you got the combined string here. On number 7, we have finding out most occurred item in a list. To find the max element from a list, what do? You just invoke the max by passing the list, and this gives you the largest item from that list, right? Let's run this. So you got 5, which is the largest item from this array. Now how can you print the item that is occurring the most in this list? For that, along with the array, you pass the key to sort this array according to the count of these items. So here I've converted the array to set because I don't want to calculate this count for duplicate elements repeatedly. So here you see we got 2. 2 is the item from this list which is occurring most. So basically what it does, it takes items one by one from the set, finds out the count for that item, and then the max function returns the maximum count, the item with maximum count from the set. Now let's say you are given this array, which is array of arrays, and you're told to find out the subarray with maximum length. So you can pass the len function as key in this max function. Let's run this. So it will give you the item with maximum length. And here in this first list that we have taken, if you want to print the count for each item, then we can simply import counter from collections. So from collections import counter, and we can invoke counter function by passing this array to this counter function. So let's copy this, and here let's call this array list, and let's pass this list to this counter, and let's print the result. So here you got the count for each item present in this array. On number 6, we have addition of two lists. So these are the two lists that we are going to add here. So let's add L1 and L2 and let's print the result. Let's run this. So see, we get all the elements of both the lists in this list. So what it does is it returns a new list. Let's call it L3, and then we are printing that list. But what if we want to append all the items from L2 into L1 itself? We don't need a new list, okay? So here we are invoking the append function on L1 by passing L2 as an argument. Now let's print L1 and see if it works that way. So here see, it added L2 as a single item, and what we wanted was to add all the items individually in list L1. So for that we have extend function. here in this extend we can pass the list with which we want to append L1, and now let's print L1. So see, this is what we wanted. Let's comment these two lines to make the output look clean. So see here we are only having the elements from list L1 and L2. Now let's say we want to add L1 and L2 such that it only adds the corresponding items from these lists. So for this we can use list comprehension. We can add I and j for ij in zip. We can zip the corresponding items from L1 and L2, and then we can add those items. This will result to a new list. Let's run this. So this is all we wanted. It is adding up the corresponding items from L1 and L2. Now we are going to add L1 and L2 such that it only groups corresponding items. So again, for that we're going to go for list comprehension with zip. We're going to take two pointers I and j, and we are going to group them in a list. So we're using brackets around I and j. So for ij in zip L1 and L2, enclose it in brackets, and now let's print the resulting list. Let's run this. So this is a list of lists having the items grouped into a list. If you want something else, we want to go for something else like a tuple, let's change this to parentheses, and now let's see we are having a list of tuples. On number 5 we have function sum. So we're again back with a list, and here we are going to print the sum of items present in this list. So let's print the sum, and you know what we are going to get. We are going to get 10 here. But one thing about the sum function you might not know is that it takes an additional parameter, which is the start with value. By default it is 0, but for the sake of this example let's take 2 and let's print this result. So it returns 12, which seems quite obvious. It seems that it adds all the items present in the list and then adds 2 to that result, right? But the way it executes this thing is quite different. It starts with the value 2, or the start with value, and then adds the first item from this list, and in that result it adds another item, the next item, and it keeps on doing this until there are elements left in this list. So this way it executes this operation. Now if we look into another example where we are having a list of lists and we want to sum all the items present in that list, then how are we going to do this using the sum function? So let's say this is the list, and here inside this list we are having the arrays as items. So let's say we have array 1, array with value 2, array with value 3, array with value 4, and array with value 5. And here let's print the sum for this list. So here we are going to get this exception, unsupported operand types, int and list. So here, as I told you, that the default value for start with, if we do not pass any value, is 0. So here we need to pass this empty list if we want to add these lists. So it will start with the empty list and will add the first item to result to a list holding 1, and then it will add the next item, which is a list holding 2. This will result to a list holding 1 and 2. And this is how it will keep adding all the items. So this is how this sum function works. Now let's run this program to see what we get. So let's print this. So if we pass this start with value, we get a list holding values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On number 4, we have range function. We use range function to get a sequence of integers. So with range function, we do specify when we want to stop. Let's say we want to stop at 5. Let's see what we are going to get from this range 5. So range with stop value returns an object which is going to generate a sequence starting from 0 till the stop value. Here the stop value is not inclusive. Let's get the sequence in a list. So see, we're getting a list having items starting from 0 to 4. Here we can also specify the start value. Let's say we want to start the sequence from 1. So here we will pass 1 and then 5. Let's run this. So this time the sequence starts with 1. And there is one more parameter that we can pass to this range function, and it is called step. Steps specify the increment or decrement at each step. Let's change the stop value to 10 and let's see what we get. So see here, each value is 2 more than the previous one. On number 3, we have evaluate function. In Python, you can evaluate even a string expression very easily. We have a built-in function called eval, in which we pass the string and it evaluates that string just like a Python expression. Let's run this and it returns a number. On number 2, we have finding out execution time. If you're performing an operation and you're interested in knowing how much time that operation is taken up, you simply can go for time. You can note the start time by saying time.time, and after the completion of that operation you can note the end time. So time.time, and then you can simply print the difference of these two. So here let's say total execution time was the difference of end time and start time. Let's run this. So this much time this operation was taken up. Now on number 1, we have printing out calendar. Let's say you want to print the current month on the screen. For that, you can simply import calendar and then you can print the month by saying calendar.month. You can invoke month function by passing the month that you want to print. Let's say you want to print the 9th month of 2020. So this prints this as a string. Now let's say you want to print the complete year. So you'll say calendar.calendar and you'll pass the year. So see, it prints the complete calendar for 2020. You can also pass additional parameters. You can pass the date column width that you want. You can pass lines per week. You can pass the number of spaces you need between month columns. And you can pass the number of lines in your multi-line string. So these are few parameters that you use for additional formatting.